Awesome. Well, welcome to our viewers. My name is Jeff, and I'm a developer advocate at Google Cloud, and I'm delighted to be joined by a stellar panel today where we will focus on data engineering specialization. I'd like to first thank Andrew and Mike and the Data Team Summit for allowing us the opportunity to have this conversation. And this session is called Navigating the Maze of Data or Specialization in Data Engineering. And navigating this maze is something that all of us data engineers need to do. We always think about how much do we need to specialize? Do I throw all of my eggs into one basket and go really deep, or should I remain more of a generalist? And we'll hear today from our panelists how they've handled these situations in the past, maybe what they've seen with their colleagues and their peers. And we'll try to focus today's discussion on three main topics. Number one is technical specialization. So think about technologies like Spark or data warehousing or streaming tools. We'll then move to thematic specialization. So that might be working in financial services, working deep in healthcare, or some sort of mix. And lastly, how to balance that breadth versus depth across technology and thematic areas. So we've got a couple of fantastic panelists here, Gokul and Siddharth. I'll let each one introduce themselves. And with your introduction, I'd also love to hear a quick lightning round of, would you identify as a specialist or a generalist in technology? And what about thematically? So I'll pass it over to Gokul first.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, I would also like to thank Andrew and Mike. I have been part of this collaboration, whatever they have put together previously, and I'm glad I was able to take part in Data Team Summit. So I'm an engineering manager at Capital. So primary responsibility is taking care of whatever the customer swipes for our credit card customers. And I come from the loyalty background, and pretty much any swipes happening for credit card customers goes to the platform which I manage. So that's on the org side. And in general, I'm more associated with the data because my day job as well, it's mostly from the data engineering and heavily associated with Spark from its initial days. And I regularly contribute to our tech blogs, and also I speak in various opportunities, mostly in the area of big data and NoSQL. That's pretty much.
Awesome. Thanks, Gokul. And Siddharth?
Yeah. Hey, thank you for having me, guys. So yeah, second time around on this summit. So it's a very special place for me. And I'm happy to be here. So quick introduction about myself. I am a data engineer by profession. Currently, I am a data engineering manager at Wayfair. I've been here for more than 2.5 years now, and I support the supply chain technology organization from a data engineering perspective. And I think, Jeff, you asked about whether I'm a specialist or a generalist. I would say I like to have a balance between the two. So I want to go deep, or I prefer going deep in a couple of areas, while at the same time be aware of what's going around in terms of technology, what tools and frameworks are available in the market, what companies like Wayfair are using, so that I can effectively then help my team and the organization to leverage the best that's out there. And thematically speaking, again, for vested interest, I would prefer to go deep or have some good domain knowledge about the areas that I'm supporting the business with from. But that's not always the case. But yeah, I think, again, you need to find a balance for both. So that's what I strive for.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the intros. So we'll begin with the session with some discussion on tech specialization, specifically focusing on some of the benefits and risks of going really deep into particular technologies, things like warehousing or streaming, or even specific tools like Spark or Redshift or whatever it may be, versus remaining more of a generalist. So Gokul, I'll pose this first question to you, which is, in your experience, what do you think about going very deep in a small set of technologies versus remaining more general? And in terms of long-term, medium to long-term career trajectories? How have you navigated this, and how have you seen your peers do the same?
So from my experience, I don't want to conclude that it's a beneficial detrimental, but Siddharth, I already hit that point. It's a balance, I probably would say, right? So from my experience too, that is probably the case. I want to highlight a couple of maybe examples from my own experience interacting with few folks, right? One, going deep on the knowledge area, particularly I won't name the companies, but related to the classic ELTs or whatever we have been practicing for decades, right? Those things also probably did fade away after a period of time, right? So going deep, in turn, even the ETL, whatever we used to have, those things itself is getting challenged recently with various different design patterns evolving, because with uh, the data ecosystem having more and more real-time needs and the proliferation of data, those things are really pressurizing the classic ELT itself, right? So though we have those things there in the market for a very long time, now I see there are different patterns evolving there. ELTP, you publish at the end of the ETL, or even ELT, right? There are a lot of new players who are really accelerating in that front. And recently, because there is a hangover from recent uh, reinvent, all those things like zero ETL. I I got fascinated with the zero ETL recently. So there are a lot of different things. Just putting everything together, like going deep, definitely has a lot of benefits. Like it depends on where you really stay in your career is where I would say, right? Go more and more deep probably is beneficial for long term, right? But staying horizontal and having really tap on things happening across probably is definitely good to have when you are starting with the data engineering, the data science.
Good. Thanks for that. And I like to follow up with this with Siddharth. Gokul mentioned that specific ETL tools run into issues as data changes and becomes data velocity or volume, or alt data shapes change over time. If someone were to remain more focused on a specific technology, like a data warehousing tool or an ETL tool, how do they adapt? How would somebody adapt, or how do they think about what's going on in the market? Because there is this inevitable evolution of technology, and what we have today is great, but something in 10 years is going to be very different. How do we navigate that and think about what's going on in the market when we might be using a specific tool set within our own companies?
Yeah, but I think it goes back to change is inevitable, right? I think you have to change with the times, unfortunately, right? Everybody wants to be, in their own like nice little bubble, and obviously that's not the case in reality. Again, I think that's what, right, Gokul was also saying the same thing, where we have transitioned from the traditional ETL tools, which was like on-prem and things like that. Everybody was comfortable doing their mappings, source to target mappings, and then building out the data warehouse and exposing that data to a dashboarding tool or something. But things have changed quite a bit, with the evolution of big data, cloud coming into the picture. And I think as engineers, you always have to be evolving. I feel like that's their job, is to engineer things, right? So whatever is the needs of the business, or whatever evolution is happening in the industry, we need to be at least keep an eye on, open for that. I mean, as you know, it's always good to be like it's always good to have a couple of areas where you're strong in, right? It's like you could be strong in like doing data development in Python or SQL, but at the same time be open-minded to, as you said, right? be open-minded to learning about how streaming is done, because if you're in an organization, you'll come across different use cases requiring you to go with different like patterns, right? For example, and you can't really say no, saying that, hey, no, I can only give you data at the end of the day, rather than if the business needs it up to the minute kind of a thing. So there's always this thing where you need to be open-minded about things, and obviously create a plan, right? Like work with your managers or work with your team to see how you can transition into more modern, like using more modern tools and technologies. So yeah, I mean, you need to, I think what I've come from is organizations are also open about it. Like, so they recognize that things are changing, so they need to give the tools and things to the teams to enable them to make that transition as well.
Yeah, thanks for that. And so I'm hearing this theme of remain open-minded, create balance or remain balanced, and work with others within the organization to start to look out and introduce modern tools while keeping your business needs in mind, because you still need to deliver data to your business users at the same time. I think moving on to thematic specialization. I'm interested in some of the pros and cons that you've seen with industry expertise with these themes. One example might be going pretty deep into healthcare or into financial services space. An alternative might be remaining agnostic and really jumping around to different industries in different roles. I'll first pose this over to Gokul. What do you think about becoming more of a domain expert? Do you think that's becoming more important for data engineers? For example, if you really understand the basics of data modeling for financial services, this might be great if you're working in different financial service industry jobs. But if you translate over to a healthcare setting or a media and entertainment, how much of that transfers, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, I think both are probably important, right? Maybe one argument I would say in favor of going more deep, but as I previously alluding as well, like depending on where you stand, right? The favor of specialization or going more deep, right? Recently, AI is the buzzword, right? Wherever we have anything related to vertical use cases, right? Even your organization mostly probably may have different silos, right? Even there, you probably may have all this, right? In that, I see specialization probably plays a major role, but it's a balance, right? There you will have more specialists doing certain things, and there are definitely engineers who handle all the things behind the scene. They both need to collaborate more, right? It's a balancing act, but it's if we just zoom out a little bit, right? A lot of the data engineering related tasks are still, if you just see from a broader view, they are still a little bit agnostic, right? We do extraction or cleansing, or even the exploration, displaying. It's all in a broader spectrum. Like there definitely there is things where you can do without the specialization. It's still required to handle those things, but still you need some specialists to have everyone row in the same direction, right? So that's the key, right? So they both have to probably collaborate more than do things. That's I would probably say, like it's required. You need to have both. Maybe we are sticking to the same theme. It's a balance. You still need to have, definitely, because I'm coming from the financial services background, right, and involved heavily in the data engineering space, right? We handle probably billions of transactions every year, right? So there is a lot of compute which happens every day to day basis, but still, like they both operate together for us to really have the business value delivered. So that's the theme.
Yeah, and I think what I'm also hearing in this is that even at a financial services company, you have people that work in different domains. So there's marketing data at a financial services company, there's transaction data, there's There's all sorts of different data. And so although a company may be in a particular vertical, there are all different types of data within it, and there are different specializations even within a particular company.
Yeah.
Siddharth, I'd love to ask you about, I guess, following up to Gokul, to follow up there, but also speak a little bit further to this idea of the fact that data engineers have translatable skills regardless of the industry you're working in. So data engineers do ETL, they do exploration, regardless of the theme of the data that they're using. How do you think about that?
So you're absolutely right? Like, so as Gokul is also mentioning, so most of the approach or the process that you follow to onboard data into the environment and follow the process from start to finish, those principles stay the same, right? Especially let's just say you're at company A and now you go to company B and stuff. So I think those principles are very similar. You don't really change too much. Obviously, every company does things differently, so that's the only difference that's there. But again, it's again like a double-edged sword, right? Like, so if you are moving from financial services to financial services, understanding the domain, understanding the business speak, understanding what the business users are talking, you are able to relate to it much quicker as opposed to changing industries, right? Let's say, so for me, I spent a good 5-6 years in retail before, then I moved into financial services for a couple of years, and then I moved back into retail right now. So when I came back to retail, I'm like, okay, whatever I did 5 years, like, for those 5 years at the other company, I can easily talk to my business users. I can then question them and understand like what they're trying to go after and things like that. So that's very relatable. So I think the question that everybody would ask is, if you're young, as I think Gokul said, right, age or the experience matters, right? So if you're young, you want to get exposed to a whole lot of different like domains or domain areas and stuff. But then eventually, once you get more mature, once you get more experience, you will end up in a couple of areas which you will like maybe or you prefer. And then I've seen people move around in that circle, right? So I think Gokul said he's financial services. I think he's got enough experience to be in there. So pretty much he's labeled as a data engineering manager or whatever, supporting like business, like financial services, function or whatever. And same thing for me, right? So again, so I think my advice to junior engineers in the team or people who are starting out is be open-minded to frameworks, tools, technologies, as well as the domain. So, and then eventually your career will lead you to a particular area which you might like and thrive in.
Yeah, that's great. And that's what I found as well, was working in data engineering. I was working in consulting for data engineering, and I would move from one company to another. So media and entertainment, over to healthcare, over to financial services, back to media and entertainment. And it was that shift was exciting, but also helped me see what type of domain do I like to work in, and what type of technologies do I like to work. So I think that experience, just trying different things, was invaluable. And I guess to follow up on this, balancing depth and breadth is what I'd like to discuss next, and how data practitioners might find a balance between specialization and general skills, taking into account personal interests, which might develop over time, but also thinking about market demand and career goals. So Gokul, I'd like to pose the question to you about how you think data engineers can strike a balance between pursuing personal interests and specializing in areas where there's really high market demand. So we're seeing a lot of hype right now about AI that could assist data engineering work, but fundamentally data engineering still exists, and we still need to get the data, clean it up, and make it usable for everybody. So how do you think about pursuing personal interests versus what we're hearing as this is a really hot area, everybody should go do this now?
So you touched upon the point, Jeff. Data is the new oil, right? So be the new buzzword AI, right? Unless you have the cleansed proper data in place, there is not a whole lot you will be able to really drive value out of, right? Unless you have clean data and you have means in which you can extract the insights. So it's a, I probably will put it like this, right? You always having eye out to really see what's happening across, right? So that probably is, maybe I will say you always try to drink from the fire hose. Like staying top of things happening around is how I have always dealt this, right? I have a lot of aspirations and even trying to see how things are operating. And then the striking balance there is not if all the things, whatever you uh, like doing, or even the cutting edge technologies, you will be able to immediately bring those things back, right? There is always a adoption phase at enterprise, but staying on top of things happening in the industry is the key. You should always uh, continuously keep looking for those things, and that's the only way you will be able to bring back those learnings to even to your enterprise who are in the phase of those adoption. Siddharth was also previously mentioning, right? I think nowadays even organizations are definitely open, right? They are not uh, thinking about having those ETL, those sort of things. I don't think those things it exists, but primarily they're pretty open to all these new things. So they are trying out all those things. The main thing here is we need to bring those things back. For that the key is we always staying on top of industry things, whatever happening. It's the balance there.
And I'm curious, I'll pose this to both Siddharth and Gokul. Let's start with Siddharth, but how do you, if you were a junior engineer, how would you stay on top of those new trends and get involved with them? Like, where do you look? Who do you look to? How do you actually start implementing, whether personally or maybe in a work environment?
Yeah, so I think that's where the whole revolution has happened, right? So, nowadays it's very easy to kind of build your own POC, right? Like, so with the advent of the cloud, you can just basically go in and play around with anything new that's come out, right? And see whether it's really, you really find it exciting or not. You want to really see it for yourself. Obviously, there are tons of resources available nowadays. Social media is filled with that stuff, pretty much. So anywhere you go, you are seeing these. And there are a lot of these. Earlier, it used to be like you got to pay to get this training and things like that. A lot of content is available now, which is free of cost as well. So as again, both of us concur, Gokul and I, like organizations also are new. It's new to them, right? All the leaders, let's say all the CXOs and everybody is new to, hey, what's this new thing and how can we bring it into our environment? Like, how does it help the business? And so the engineers, be it software engineers, data engineers, whatever, they're being asked to kind of say, hey, go and test it out, see if it really makes sense. And then you bring those learnings back into your organization and share it with your managers and your directors and stuff like that. So so that's what it is. I think but then again, in the other end of the day, what's going to happen is what's the ROI? That's the question that's going to be asked eventually. So everybody wants to play in this sandbox environment, like to see what's going on. But what will stick, the time will only tell for that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Siddharth. And Gokul, I'm curious about your opinion as well on how do we continue to learn? How do we find out what's new? Specifically as a junior data engineer, where might they find out and how do they get started?
So I concur with what Siddharth said. Right now, the hurdle to any entry, I think that's not there at all. Right, there is a lot of resources available. In those lines, I probably will add one more thing. Like it's not particularly for junior engineers. Like I do see that there are, just making a pitch for our submit too, right? It's see we are not really restricting. It's a pretty open, right? Now I see that you can go and get to know what are the things which are happening, right? Engineers are pretty much there across, right? This is not the only thing I see that going to the conference, right? That's one thing I have done throughout my career, where I see sometimes doing things day to day, right? You probably have a lot of deliverables, those things to manage, but getting out and trying to explore, right? Making the connection and also trying to see what is really happening in the industry, right? There are different things. Conference is also one of the thing I would say, and also nowadays there are various flavors to that. You don't need to even really go for a conference, right? There are virtual ones available. There are tons of options. Just you just need to keep exploring. That's all.
Yeah, thanks for that. And this conference is one example of that, right? Where anybody can join, anybody can listen and continue to learn. A question around mentorship and guidance. I'd like to ask each of you around how do we find experienced data engineers or team leads to help navigate this, again, specialization maze? Maybe someone to tell us, really go deep or think about this, or, hey, you might want to consider some balance. Where do we find these mentors? And maybe what are some key insights or advice that you might offer as a mentor to some early career data engineers on the specialization path?
That you want to go?
Okay, yeah, I can go. But yeah, I think it's as a manager or your team lead, right? It's a responsibility to guide. Obviously you need to do that all regularly, right? You have your one-on-ones with your direct reports to understand, like, what kind of career path they want to take on, right? What interests them and things like that. So that's like a evolving conversation, and then you blend the things that are coming in within the organization, right? As a manager, you're also exposed to what's coming up, what's happening across the other areas within the organization, what kind of projects you're getting involved in, or the team is going to get involved in. And so keeping an eye open for that as well. So and then you kind of like match to say whether are there any synergies here with, let's say I have a use case for streaming data, which we've never done before, for example. So there's another engineer who's voiced an opinion or like a thing that, hey, I really want to explore this, and I think that's a perfect opportunity for them to kind of like create a path for that engineer to start focusing on that, like, so give them opportunities and the tools available so that they can easily get onboarded using that, for example, like, all the tools you need for doing this work. And then they can, be successful in what they're trying to do. So I think it's just blending the need, the interests, and the need of the organization as well at the same time. Anything you want to add, Gokul?
Yeah, I think a different perspective on that, like it, because that's more inward, right? In the sense organization, whomever you are having, like where I see probably something having some more external mentor, that could be the area where still need to figure out, right? I at least personally, I use LinkedIn as the source, right? Pretty much for any of this kind of conversation. And I have reached out to a lot of people for getting some opinions on some hot topics. Probably I will just generalize there. So what I would probably add there is, see, it has to always sound like, first you need to clearly need to know, as Siddharth was saying, right? What is it? It's a streaming use case, or more general way, like what is that you really are looking forward, and what is that you want to do, and then wrap that around something for the mentor, right? You need to go with clear uh, like expectation. What are the things you really expect? If you have all these things laid out properly, and then if you find the mentor, I think that will work out. That's the combination, right? We cannot just, at least in the external forums, right? Internally, it's fine because there is a different relationship already exists, but externally, you need to have all these things clearly laid out. Then only you will be able to really hit the connection.
Yeah, thanks so much for that perspective. It's the difference between internally voicing your opinion and being vocal with your managers or team leads so that they can match you with future opportunities, but also externally finding people who are specialists or who are really like great at specific things and they promote that. Reach out to them, but be very clear about what you're interested in. That might be through LinkedIn, at conferences, social media, networking, anything else. Awesome. Well, we're at the end of time, so I'd like to thank our panelists, Gokul and Siddharth. And I'd also, again, like to thank the Data Teams Summit Group, Andrew and Mike, for the opportunity to let us speak here today. And everybody who's watching, thank you for attending, and we hope to see you soon.